Good morning, everyone. What a pleasure to be with you, and a pleasure to see you twice this month. Usually I start with some story about my travels here, but I didn't have any travels this morning, and I'm happy to say that my cat is asleep on the recliner, so at least I have a live audience of one, although I know that each and every one of you is also alive in God and listening, and I am joyful to be able to speak to you this month, twice. I'd like to begin with a question. And the question is, what is growth? Well, we hear that a lot, growth. We're talking about growth all the time. We're always growing. And it's very interesting to think of growth. We think of it first in a physical way. And all of us have experienced growth. I was going to say you could go down into the basement and get out the photograph albums and see yourself at 4 or 3 or 5 or 6. And then it dawned on me that not all of us have photograph albums in the basement. Some of us have albums on items not much bigger than this. I haven't gone into the basement recently, and now I'm concerned that maybe those pictures aren't actually in good shape anymore. I'm going to have to look at them and see what's what. And see the progression of my growth from little Linda to adult Linda. And of course, that's the progress that we see constantly. We take our first steps. Oh, even before that, we learn how to sit up. Then we learn how to crawl. Then we walk around hanging onto the furniture. And then one day we're running races. We're competing in marathons. We're jumping off ski slopes. We grow in our physicality. And that's part and parcel of every living being's experience. Whether you are a human being or some other species, we grow. We grow, we grow, and we grow. There's no two ways about it. But the growth of which I'm speaking this morning is our spiritual growth. What really is our spiritual growth? You know, it's interesting, as I made my, what I call my Zoom tower, which is a pile of books on my dining room table, I noticed that I have one by Gary Zukov entitled The Universal Human. I have one by Lynn McTaggart entitled The Bond, Connecting the Space Between Us. One by Sebastian Junger about tribe, which is on homecoming and belonging. A copy of the Metaphysical Bible Dictionary, and another big copy of a concordance to the Bible. The first three are more recent discussions of what we might call our spiritual growth. The Metaphysical Bible Dictionary offers us examples of spiritual growth through eons and ages past. And of course, the concordance to the Bible gives us the sources that we need to look up those words of instruction in both what we call the Old Testament, the Hebrew Scriptures, which defines relationship to God in one way, and what we call the New Testament, the Christian Scriptures, which defines our relationship to God in another way. Spiritual growth, then, is our spiritual evolution. We are constantly evolving. And if we don't think that's true, then we need to go back and once again become those little children. And though I never taught my own kids this because I hated it, it was so frightening, that dreadful little prayer, now I lay me down to sleep, I pray the Lord my soul to keep, and if I die before I wake, I pray the Lord my soul to take. That was really scary. That was really scary, because where was my soul going to go? And actually, the question was, what was my soul? I didn't know what a soul looked like. Nobody knew what a soul looked like. I knew what my hands and feet looked like, my face looked like in the mirror, but about my spiritual self, I really did not know much, except what I was told by others in position of authority, which would be my parents, educators, religious leaders, and what today we would call influencers, which is a contemporary name for people who had clout back then. We look at this spiritual evolution and we say to ourselves, what even leads us to believe that we have the right to evolve spiritually? And for that, friends, I would take us back into the very earliest pages of the Bible when we look at the creation story. We all know it, so I'm not going to read it or describe it, except for that moment when God speaks to the human beings he has made. He asks, he, she, it, pick your pronoun, asks, where are you? And the humans answer, Hineni, which is Hebrew for, I am here. I am here. It is in that moment when God speaks to the whole of humanity that has been created and invites it into spiritual evolution. It's absolutely natural that we are going to grow. As long as we are alive and in reasonably good health, we are going to continue to grow. But it is by invitation. It is invitation by the Holy One of us all that says, do you want to grow in another way? Then, of course, that brings many of us who had some kind of traditional upbringing with a spiritual or religious background. It brings us to a common response to the question of what are we here for? And the answer many of us learned was to know, love, and serve God. To know, to love, and to serve God. And we were taught how to do that. We were given lists of do's and don'ts. Those are basically known as the 10 Commandments, and the expansion on that, the commentaries on that. Teachers, the first among them being Jesus in the New Testament, who gives us so many ideas of how we should be. Love one another as I have loved you. Feed the poor, clothe the naked. Jesus in his teachings offers us many ways to continue to grow spiritually, even after we appear to have finished growing physically. I'm also thinking of that physical growth. It was Grandma Moses, I believe, who didn't start painting till she was 80 or something like that. It is people who suddenly take up marathon running in their old age or surfing or go out and start a business. In other words, the opportunity for emotional growth, spiritual growth, and physical growth is never denied us until that moment when our span of human existence has come to a close and the breath leaves our body and we move on to our next level of experience of eternal life. That's for another discussion. In that moment when God says to human beings, where are you? And we answer, here I am. We have accepted that offer. And we have committed ourselves to growing spiritually. Well, what is spiritual growth? It's life, folks. It smacks us in the face every morning, either with a warm washcloth or a cold washcloth. Or you forgot to set the coffee pot last night and there's nothing in there. So you're going to have to start from scratch. Life is the consistent, constant unfolding of the opportunity for us to make choices all day long. We make physical choices. Do we get dressed? Or do we have what I call a genius day in bathrobe? A genius day in bathrobe is where you put on real shoes and pretend that you have gone to work, but you never get out of your bathrobe. You're busy. You are productive, but you have what I call a genius day in bathrobe. Or if life obliges you, which is very interesting because in this recent period of COVID, some of us have been able to have days in our bathrobe and no one knew the difference. I'm mindful of a ministers' meeting we had, maybe it was last year. It was at the height of it when no one was going absolutely nowhere. And I remember a wonderful minister whom I esteem. I said, so what's new? And he stood up and he said, well, I'm wearing pants instead of sweatpants. And we all cracked up laughing. Life has changed in many ways, and it is continuing to change. And our lifetime of growth is choosing how we meet. How do we face these changes? Something that's very significant, and I believe one of the greatest gifts that New Thought, as interpreted by Unity, offers us, is the concept of the 12 powers. The 12 powers are attributes of God in which we participate, and therefore we call them powers. We also can call them possibilities, potentialities, or competencies. I like the term competencies because as we understand in Unity, each of us is an individualized expression of God, and therefore God's competencies are our competencies as well. So I'd like to look at 4 of them this morning, actually the first 4. And though many of you know that I am seriously wedded to Charles Fillmore's revealing word, and I did consult them, I would like us to think of other ways of interpreting the 4 words that we're going to look at this morning. I wish I were there with you and could step off the podium and ask, so what do you think of the first one, which is faith? And then I could get a few answers and then we could discuss them. But we can't do that this morning. Maybe we will in our talk time later. But if we look at faith, and I did very quickly, I looked at faith, and what Fillmore said was the perceiving power of the mind linked with the power to shape substance. That's good. You know why? Because to me, faith is a verb. Faith is a verb. It's not a noun. It's a verb. It is unfortunate that our English language does not allow us to say, I am faithing. We have to say something like, well, I believe that, or I believe in this, or whatever. But the reality is we are faithing whenever we are using our perfect union with the one mind to think of ways to be. To think of ways to be present to one another in loving, kind, and thoughtful ways. You know, pretty much every language I ever had to study has a response to the word thank you. It is some form of you're welcome. It's a response. It's a call and a response. Someone has done something for us. We say thank you, and they say you're welcome. It's the give and take of humanity, human experience that is founded in the spiritual belief that we are all one. That is part of our faith as well. I am faithing in the oneness of all of us and that recognition. So this competence of faith is very, very important because it's a foundation. The second one, and what I look at it when I see it as a verb is, first, when I say I am faithing, I am thinking I am. Remember that that is God's name. Remember that when Moses says to God, after he sees the burning bush, and God commands him to lead his people to the promised land, which we know is a higher consciousness within us. He says, who shall I say sent me? He said, tell them I am. I am that I am. So the first thing that faith means to me is I am. And if the I am is within me, then the second word is I can. I can. I can continue to evolve spiritually no matter what life throws at me. And friends, that it isn't all a bowl of cherries. I have a music box. It's very, very old. I've had it, for probably 40 years now. And it was old when somebody gave it to me. And it plays Life is Just a Bowl of Cherries. But you know what happens when you bite into a cherry? Right. You bite into the pit. And that's the paradox of life. It comes with the bitter and the sweet. It comes with the soft and the hard. It comes with the joyful and the sad. It comes with the deliciousness of human experience and the sadness of human loss. But faith is enduring. Faith is enduring. And when we say I am, we are also saying I can. So that's our foundation. The second competency that I would like to look at us is the second power. It is called imagination. Imagination. Imagination has been called the scissors of the mind. That's what we teach the kids in Sunday school, the scissors of the mind. They really like that idea. And what Fillmore said was, I'm going to just give you one word. He said imagination, the faculty of mind that images and forms, the power to shape and form thought. That's good, but you know what I liked better? I liked what I came up with. Thinking outside of the box. Thinking outside of the box. That's what imagination is. And what is the box? The box, my dear friends, is all the things that other people have told us about ourselves, about them, about the world, and how it works. And many of them are examples of error thought. Many of us have spent dollars and hours in therapy giving back those messages to the people from which they came, giving them back lovingly and saying, this is not a message for me. It was a message for you. May you find healing in God's presence. And we gently and quietly return it to them. Imagination is thinking outside of the box. Imagination is tearing up into little pieces the piece of paper on which we have written, it can only be like this. It can only be like this. Boy, there's a lot of that. It can only be like this. No, you can't do that. No, it can't be that way. No, you can't marry that person. No, you can't go to that school. No, you can't have that job. You can't. And that simply isn't true. The wonderful thing of our world today in our evolution is that we are crashing through cement floors and breaking through glass ceilings every single day. So here we have a foundation of faith. And now we have a capacity that allows us to look at something and go, why is it that way? Why can't it be another way? And that frees us for the creative energy, which is God's presence within us. These two work together. Faith and imagination. Imagination can be a little tricky, however, friends. It's like giving a 2-year-old a pair of scissors and a pair of socks. Big mistake. Only give them little kid scissors and give them a piece of paper. Because if you give them real scissors and a pair of socks, they're liable to cut them up. Because the next capacity that we need and which we have through God's presence within us is discernment. I like the word discernment better than the word that we sometimes use. And that word is judgment. Judgment can sound a little hard, but discernment is very, very likable. It's discernment. What it says very simply is that inner spiritual faculty by which humankind may receive the revelations of God mind. The faculty by which we inwardly know, by which I mean intuitively know, that which is spiritual. It indicates the ready insight into divine law that was the glory of the Master. If anybody illustrated discernment, it was certainly the Master Teacher, Jesus. Jesus would look at everything and know rightly. We talked about that a couple Sundays ago when I quoted Antoine de Saint-Exupéry and said, we have to see with the heart in order to see rightly, because the eye doesn't always see what is truly important. Discernment means to judge rightly, to use good sense. There is a scripture, I believe it is in one of the epistles, where it speaks, the line is, whatever is good, whatever is true, whatever is beautiful, we value that. We hold it as worthy. Now let's look at what good is. We all have an idea of what good is. Wow, the first thing that popped into my head right now was chocolate cake. Okay, remember I said we are human beings having a spiritual experience. So for me, chocolate cake would be right up there at the top. My mother made a 1-layer chocolate cake. She made it in one of those 8-inch or 9-inch square pans. She had the recipe memorized. So if the phone rang, she picked it up and they said, oh, Aunt so-and-so or Aunt and Uncle so-and-so are going to be down in about an hour or two. She would haul out that pan. She would get out the ingredients, and she used imagination because it called for sour cream. And if she didn't have any sour cream, she took a cup of milk or buttermilk and put a tablespoon of vinegar in it and let it sit on the kitchen counter for 15 or 20 minutes. And then she had clabbered milk. And she proceeded with that recipe. And the best part of that recipe was when she made the frosting, which was a chocolate peanut butter frosting. And you know what happened next. She gave me the bowl to lick. So there's a very happy memory of something that I perceived as good. Okay, now I have to look at it today and say, if I were to make that recipe at least once or twice each week and eat the whole thing by myself, would that be good? No, that would not be good. So discernment is very, very important in our lives. It means to judge rightly. To judge rightly. Will this be good for me? Or will this not be good for me? I said, the good, the true. I'm mindful of the fact that on the back wall of the prayer chapel at Unity Village in Kansas City, it says, you shall know the truth and the truth shall make you free. The question is, what is the truth? What is the truth? And for that, we need discernment. When I was a child, if I washed my hair, and I won't tell you how we washed hair back in those days in a house that didn't have a shower. You don't want to know. Some of you do know and are smiling along with me. Then I had to sit around the house until my hair dried. Because, quote, if you went out of the house with wet hair, you caught a cold. Okay, I know the doctors and nurses and the healthcare workers listening to me are going, not, of course not. But that's what we thought. We didn't know about viruses. We didn't know about things that floated in the air. Had nothing to do with whether you had wet hair or dry hair. It is a case of truth, friends. It is a case of what is true. You don't catch cold by going outside with wet hair. Since leaving home, I've done it more times than I could possibly count in the rest of my days. And the best part about it is you just adjust the little louvers in the car so the warm air from the car heater blows on your head and it'll dry your hair by the time you get there. Yes. So we distinguish between what is good and what is true. Now, the last one, we might be likely to dismiss. What is good, we understand. What is true, we recognize as important. But what is beautiful? What is beautiful? And why do we value it? Beautiful. We think of beauty. And what do we say? Beauty is in the eye of the beholder. But with what eye are we viewing? Are we viewing with the inner eye of the power and presence of God within us? Or are we viewing with the eye of the human that goes, ooh, that's a spider. Or ooh, that's a bat. Ooh. We look at a little kitten. We look at a puppy. We look at beautiful birds on our decks and our porches, at our feeders. We look at the trees. We look at the things that we impute beauty to. But I can assure you, friends, without bats to eat up the mosquitoes in our world, we'd be chewed to pieces every summer. And spiders do serve a purpose the same way earthworms do. Every living thing on the planet has a purpose. It is we who must look at it and determine its beauty in the reflection of its creator, and not simply by some misguided perception that we have. So discernment is really critical. So we have faith, we have imagination, we have discernment. I'm going to mention the power of strength, the competency of strength. It's interesting to know that some churches in this month speak of strength as the power of the month. Some churches speak of love as the power of the month. A number of years ago in Unity, there was a little bit of a discussion, and I'm still going with the Fulmorian approach that if we have a power of this month, it is strength. Reverend Roz and I had a good conversation about that, and she said it was okay for me to talk about strength this month. What is strength? What is strength? Once more, I have to go to Fillmore. You know, I almost wasn't going to do this, but I find that his words are so powerful. Strength. The simplest expression is the energy of God. Freedom from weakness. Stability of character. Stability of character. It's why Jackie and I were so delighted to be able to choose this hymn that we did today, which is number 236. Take my life and let it be consecrated, Lord, to thee. It speaks of all the capacities that we have, my moments, my days, my hands, my voice, my will, Let all of these actions of the presence of God within me, these competencies within me, be devoted to the expression of making God visible in the world. As we say, if God's hand is to be seen, it is our hand that must be stressed for it. So if strength is God's energy, then how else can we perceive it? We perceive it as resilience. Boy, that's a real catchphrase today. I know more than one person who's written a book on resilience. I've probably heard more than one podcast on resilience. I've seen more than one workshop on resilience. That's the big word today, resilience. You know, resilience has always been around. It is what it is. It is the faithing in God's presence in my life, in our lives, as endurance and persevering. It means that every morning we get up, we either have a genius day in bathrobe or we get dressed. Or my favorite little 7 words, suit up, show up, do what comes up. That is persevering. That is persevering. In the Jewish tradition, in the Mishnah, which is a body of good writing, it says, it's not incumbent upon us to finish the work, but neither are we free to evade it. Once having started, friends, once having started on our spiritual growth, which is meeting life every day and expressing God on it, in it, as it, we don't quit. We absolutely don't quit. These 4 powers or capacities exercised by us as we use the unity tools of denials and affirmations. Remember the power of the spoken word. Thoughts held in mind produce after their kind. And words have power. Words have power, my dear friends. So we speak our denials and we speak our affirmations. Denials are saying this appearance of illness, of poverty, of disorder has no power in my life. And I affirm that all is well, that all is in order, that I am whole and healed, that I am prospered in every way. And it is so powerful that every Sunday we speak a variation of that. And then, of course, the 2 more powerful, even more powerful exercises of prayer and meditation. Prayer has been said, it is our speaking to God, and meditation is our listening to God. That may be, and however we exercise prayer and however we exercise meditation, it's incumbent upon us to do it. When we are centered in our awareness that God is present to us, we are able to imagine beyond description the things of which we are capable. And then we discern rightly. This is good. This is true. This is beautiful. This benefits each and every one of us, the whole of humanity, the whole of our planet. We are at our best to express God made visible. Starting to bring my talk to a close, and I actually had a different closing, but something happened this morning that made me change my mind as to what I was going to say. This morning I turned on the radio at 7:00, which I don't usually do, and I remembered that in my local NPR, which is 91.7 WUOM, that there is a program called On Being. It is moderated by a woman named Krista Tippett. This show has been on for a really long time. And this morning, it was a rebroadcast of her interview of two names that you might recognize. One is Robert Thurman, and the other one is Sharon Salzberg. Both of them are well-known teachers and facilitators of the teachings of the Buddha. What they talked about was about love and hate as human experiences of growth. Oh, there are things that we love. Oh, there are people that we love. You know, we use the word so lightly. Oh, I love ice cream. Oh, I love chocolate cake. You know, oh, I hate mashed potatoes. Oh, what was it? Broccoli. Broccoli always got a bad rap. But friends, they are very strong emotions. They are very strong emotions. And they color the way we experience our spiritual growth. And I thought maybe I'll just mention that. And then I sat down to pick out my two angel cards. Many of you know I'm really big on the angel cards. And the way I do that is the first card that I pick is I say, infinite loving wisdom guides my hand to the energy that it desires to express in me, as me, through me today. And I pick the card forgiveness. Okay, that's one of those meh kind of angel cards. Yes, it's very positive. Yes, we must practice forgiveness, but our human side goes, oh, but what's it going to look like this time? Well, it got worse, friends, because then I picked the second card. Infinite loving wisdom guides my hand to the experience that it desires to have this day. And I pulled out the word patience. And I thought, oh, gee. And then I remembered the first 4 words that I had used this morning. Faith, imagination, discernment, and strength. And what I see in those is the path forward for continued spiritual growth. And so as we prepare for our time of meditation, let's begin with ourselves in thinking of forgiveness and patience.